Now you can start, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon and Jai Hind to everyone, all the viewers today. I am Angad Pratap. I am an ISRO astronaut, and today I am, as part of an outreach activity, present before all of you uh, to conduct a small talk on how to become an astronaut. I have done a few outreach activities for school children till date, and largely they have been for children who are from lower grades mostly. And today's talk, my target audience would essentially be children who are from ninth grade onwards up to uh, people who are postgraduate level who want to make a career in astronautics. Uh, I am basically a product of science, from science and for science. And today's talk would be all about science. So without wasting any further time, let's get on with the talk. I'll just get into a presentation mode and we'll start off. Yeah. Can we start the presentation mode, please? Yeah. Have you muted the video? No, video you need to mute. Okay. So today I will be talking in particular about space sciences. During my talk, I will also be talking about the possible selection process for astronauts in India in the future. However, I must say here that I don't make policy for the selection process. I can only contemplate as to what possible could be the selection process in the future. Also, I may be using the words he or him throughout my talk, which should be presumed to be a he as well as a she, which means it includes women. Today, we have both women scientists and women working across the armed forces, working shoulder to shoulder with men, and we must respect that. We also have women scientists in the Indian Space Research Organization who have made significant contribution. To start with, I would like to cover as to who I am. Well, I am at present an astronaut training to go to space. But before I became an astronaut, what was I really doing? I started my career as a military aviator. I'm an experimental test pilot. And before joining India's pioneer astronaut corps as an experimental test pilot, I was performing some really serious scientific experiments in air for the Air Force. Although I'm not a professional scientist, however, functionally, I was performing the role of an airborne scientist working for the cause of advancing human knowledge in aviation sciences, performing experiments in flight while regularly risking my life in the process. Therefore, strictly functionally, an atmospheric airborne scientist or an endo-atmospheric airborne scientist would probably best describe my profession before I joined the prestigious Indian Space Research Organization. I must reiterate here that I am not a professional scientist. However, I've got this rare opportunity to perform some of the functionalities of a scientist. Functionally, as an atmospheric airborne scientist, I got the rare opportunity to travel to the extremities of human aviation limits, touching about 60,000 feet of altitude in a jet, touching speeds above Mach 2.0, that is double the speed of sound, almost on a daily basis. At times, even 3 times a day across 3 different fighter jets, as well as regularly pulling up to 8 to 9 Gs. Also, the complexities of aviation experiments flown by self were truly exciting and extremely challenging, and equally interesting, involving up to 8 to 9 aircraft flying alongside me at the same time. Functionally, in the future too, I may get an opportunity to perform the role of an exo-atmospheric airborne scientist, which essentially means I may get to perform experiments in space. Remember, it is that I may. It's not a given or guaranteed for sure. Mission assignment for an astronaut depends on a lot of factors beyond an astronaut's direct control. Now, before we move on, I would like to just tell everyone that there is also a requirement to appreciate that in the life of an astronaut, the majority of the science, a whooping 85% of it practiced by the astronaut, happens here on ground. The airborne or the spaceborne flight, as well as the experiments performed in space, are a mere 15%. Let's see who is an astronaut as per the World Wide Web. A professional space traveler is called an astronaut. An astronaut, astro meaning star, and not meaning sailor, is a person trained, equipped, and deployed by a human spaceflight program to serve as a crew member aboard a spacecraft. So essentially, he or she is a star sailor. The internet also defines an astronaut as a person who is trained to travel in space, pilot a spacecraft, or conduct research in space. During the course of this talk, I would like to give a first-hand perspective of who is really an astronaut while making attempts to do some value addition to the topic at hand by way of adding my astronaut perspective. Moving further, an astronaut is a person who understands physics to a good level, understands gravity, knows his math. He is an explorer. He or she is a space traveler, has survival skills, possesses aviation skills, solid engineering principles foundation. He's physically fit, psychologically fit to undertake the mission, performs various airborne experiments during the mission itself, possesses space flight skills, and at the end, functionally and overall, he is at the end of the day a person who's performing science. So essentially, he is a scientist, a product of science working in the field of space aviation, wherein she gets an opportunity to perform scientific experiments in space, is what best describes an astronaut. Okay, for today's talk, my target audience would be all the ninth graders in school upwards to postgraduates seeking a career in space sciences, or someone who's ready to take a journey of learning and of making serious contribution in space sciences. The important question always while taking a career in space sciences is, are you willing to commit your life to it? I'm really not trying to extract the fun out of it, but it's a serious job like any other. Anyone who looks forward to it as only a door open for joyrides to space, getting a celebrity status, or a glamorous life needs recalibration. Okay, what does it mean to be an astronaut? Let's look at another perspective of it. The estimated number of people believed to have lived on Earth until today is approximately around 117 billion. As of February of 2024, only a total of 681 people have gone to space. That's a mere 5.8 into 10 raised power minus 9% of all of humanity till date that we as a race have managed to send across to space. So when we really talk about space, we should really think as a race. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family. Astronauts represent all of humanity. Who can become an astronaut really? So, as I've already covered, someone who's willing to commit his entire life to the cause of scientific research. Remember that your choice to become an astronaut is always for science and not about you. Science first, you after, or it is for anyone ready to put science before self. Are you willing to become an ambassador of science and of the nation? Are you ready to shoulder the aspirations of billions of people of humanity? Of course, it can never be for a celebrity status. At times, yes, but with loads of added responsibilities to shoulder. But for those who wish to become an astronaut purely to go to space, get a view of the Earth, or those who wish to get a kick out of it, thinking they are the best, maybe this field is not for them. There is no personal glory to seek. There are only milestones to seek for the cause of science. If someone attempts to join the astronaut corps for such reasons, he or she may not last beyond a few years. You have to learn to collaborate with your space agency, work together, show patience, exercise discipline, amongst a whole lot of other things to be able to survive in the astronaut corps. It is always, in the end, about achieving science with teamwork. Remember, astronaut as a career is a secondary career. It more often than not happens to you. All that one can do is to work hard in his or her primary profession to become eligible and competent enough for being considered. You don't get into the astronaut corps by working hard alone and passing some academic exams or physical tests, but you are selected by way of a selection process which has hundreds of criteria beyond your own personal control. Usually, the medical evaluations are the ones that play spoil sport in most people's prospects in successfully becoming an astronaut, in spite of having all the necessary competence. Now, let's have a look at certain core qualities that I have identified as an astronaut in their order of importance that one needs to possess to ensure his prospects of getting selected as an astronaut. The first one being honesty and integrity. These two are absolute imperatives. One needs to be honest to his own self first and foremost, and then to his team members. Integrity and loyalty to the mission and the space agency should be unquestionable. Stress taking capability should, of course, be of a very high order, and this is self explanatory. Working in a team has unquantifiable advantages. But remember, not every one of us can be a good team person. When it comes to cognitive skills, core knowledge set, you need to have a certain amount of knowledge available to be eligible, to be even eligible for selection. Critical thinking and real time decision making during a space mission are again very, very self explanatory. Rejection handling capacity is very, very important. While being an astronaut, you should be able to handle the ups and downs of your career. There will be many times when you will face rejection. There will be others who may get assigned for a mission and you may not. It is only how you behave in certain times like those that will define your rejection handling capacity and you as a person. Gratitude. Remember, it's almost a million people, the technical work of whom makes that single flight of that one astronaut possible. Gratitude for their work and acknowledging that they were equally deserving to be on that flight. I'm actually referring to the team of technicians who make that rocket for you, that spacecraft for you, and that happens after years and years of research. In the end, in order to become an astronaut, it is important to remain focused, determined, continue to remain grounded, physically fit, and disciplined for years and years together, something which is not easy to come by. In the end, the biggest attribute of being an astronaut is they're always expected to be humble, super mature, and forever grounded. Their shoulders are always drooping due to the weight of a unique skill set and knowledge bank that only they have been chosen to shoulder. It is indeed an immense responsibility and a very difficult one too, and it requires a great level of maturity that comes with a lot of experience and practice. Let's take a look at various aspects of astronaut training. So, if I was to divide astronaut training into various verticals, the primary ones would be core academics, which is self explanatory, Physical fitness, which not only keeps the astronaut fit for a particular space mission, but also ensures that he remains available for space flight for decades to come. Aviation skills, this is an aspect which I will talk about in detail. Psychology, of course, is very, very important because astronautics is all about teamwork. And when I talk of a team, it could either be the team which is traveling with you to space or the team sitting in the mission control center, which is coordinating each and every aspect of the mission with you. Survival skills, they come in handy in case the mission was going to go awry and if you require to survive before you can be found and recovered after splashing back on Earth. And there are a whole lot of other miscellaneous skills that are required to be acquired in order to complete your training as an astronaut. Let's have a look at the average day of an Indian astronaut at the Indian Space Research Organization currently. So there are whole lot of things which the astronaut has to undergo in a short span of 3 to 5 hours on a daily basis. Of course, you don't have to do all these things on the same day. However, out of the 8 working hours that you have, approximately 3 to 3.5 hours are dedicated towards physical training on a daily basis. The remaining 4.5 to 5 hours are dedicated towards other activities, which could include yoga classes, supervised nutrition throughout the day, which includes your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's, of course, a core academic training that one has to undergo before he gets or earns his space wings. This includes basic space theory, or in other words, astronautics, or what we have seen in Bollywood and Hollywood movies termed as rocket science, launch vehicle design and functioning, spacecraft design and functioning, space station design and functioning. The important thing to understand here is that the same core academic training could take place either in India or abroad. There are various technical meetings that the astronauts are supposed to have with scientists, wherein they are to give in their qualitative requirements as a user, as inputs for the scientists to incorporate into their design processes for designing various spacecraft systems. There are spacecraft system review meetings, spacecraft system development meetings, simulator development interactions, space procedures development meetings, space food development meetings, training infrastructure development meetings. Astronauts are also involved in simulator training. There are full mission simulators, there are tabletop simulators, and then we have augmented reality or virtual reality simulators. Moving on, there is something known as aeromedical training, which forms a very, very important part of astronaut training. When I talk about aeromedical training, it also encompasses to a certain degree the component of simulation for spaceflight. As part of the aeromedical training, we have got centrifuge training, hyperbaric chamber runs, and disorientation simulator at the Institute of Aerospace Medicine. Astronauts are also allowed to continue pursuing their parallel core education. For example, pursuing a master in technology or a PhD from reputed institutes such as the Indian Institute of Science. As an astronaut and being a user available on board a spacecraft, it is extremely important to be a part of the human machine interface development. As covered earlier, during a particular day, 5 days a week, astronauts undergo physical training, which includes a cardio, calisthenics, high intensity interval training, weight training, balance training, swimming, and organization of team games. Psychological training also forms an essential part of an astronaut. Astronaut as a work profile itself is highly stressful, and psychological training comes in handy to handle those stresses. Survival training in the form of sea survival, desert survival, and snow survival are incorporated at periodic intervals to astronauts. Para jumping is another aspect which is required to be undertaken mostly by astronauts who are from non-military background. There are extensive debrief sessions that astronauts are expected to give on systems that they have trained abroad, and there may be requirement to write extensive reports on systems trained abroad as a matter of in the for the purpose of archival as well as for incorporating necessary lessons. Technical literature and reports on various aspects of human space flight are also written by astronauts. Visits, tours to various ISRO facilities, and this is one of the uh, more exciting activities because Indian Space Research Organization, as a research organization involved in space research, has got some really real and serious experimental facilities to visit, and these are where some serious science is going on. There are also abroad visits for spacesuit training and parabolic flight training. Then astronauts also are, to a limited degree, a part of Gaganyaan experimental trials. For example, the integrated air-dopped tests and the test vehicle launches. There are also there is also training which is undertaken for space experimentation. That is, the experiments that would be performed in space. Also, astronauts are part of expert domain expertise advisory panels. For example, me being an experimental test pilot, I have been part of certain advisory panels which have been discussing the manual controls inside the spacecraft. The astronauts also have to undergo regular flying training, which includes jet flying, turbopropeller flying, rotary flying, and simulator flying. Astronauts also are a part of various meetings which are thinking about the future technology concepts that may evolve in the organization in the near future and beyond. There are also outreach programs like the one which I'm doing right now. There are also possible opportunities of specialist training like docking, neutral buoyancy, parabolic flights abroad as and when they come up. Astronauts also regularly undergo evaluations, which include academic evaluations by a competent panel. The pattern of evaluation is a viva. There are physical fitness evaluations every 6 months. There are psychological evaluations every quarter. And then we have performance evaluations by superiors. There are also short courses or tech capsules like some special equipment from any outside organization making tech for the Gaganyaan, life support training, and human-centric products. Now, coming back to what it means to be an astronaut, we really need to look at what it means to be inside a spacecraft for an astronaut. Talking about the cognitive ability, needless to say, cognitive abilities inside a spacecraft are greatly reduced in the initial years of training. So the kind of cognitive ability you possess outside the spacecraft is not the same what you possess inside the spacecraft. And it takes considerable amount of time and training for you to get the same level of cognitive ability inside a spacecraft. When the spacecraft starts aviating, there is a reduction in your situational awareness and the overall cognitive ability. When it comes to psychomotor skills of a reasonable degree have to be demonstrated after factoring in all the discomforts that are there inside a spacecraft, which is no easy task by any proportions whatsoever. Situational awareness takes time to build. In the beginning years of training, you tend to lose complete track of everything else and are usually able to concentrate on only one or two maximum tasks. Stimulation of imagine, anticipate, act loop. In a fast moving machine like a spacecraft, an astronaut needs to be ahead of the dynamically changing events. This again comes with practice. Fuel management is an absolute essential and is rather self explanatory. Basic energy management includes management of potential and kinetic energy states and keeping track of both, just like inside a jet aircraft. Communications management, that is internal to the spacecraft and external to the spacecraft, is essential for being in sync with the MCC and your own crewmate inside the spacecraft. There will always be crew synergy requirements. This is required for mission safety. You need to be in sync with your crew member to be both efficient as well as safe. Multiple task management. This is self-explanatory and is a requirement of any space mission. For example, you may be required to track your position, phase of the mission, fuel, energy state, communications, and performing experiments. Critical real-time decision making, specifically the time component. This usually becomes a requirement during onboard emergencies or something known as off nominal scenarios, wherein you may be combating system failures. Stress levels and real time cognitive demands. These are quite demanding and need to be practiced across multiple simulations on ground, inside a simulator, of course. Real estate restrictions are not what we humans are used to here on ground. Inside a spacecraft, you really get quite restricted. In fact, the restriction is to such a level that you become prone to cramps and muscle pulls easily. There will also be confinement restrictions, as in, you will feel literally packed inside a spacesuit for as long as 6 to 8 hours in the same position and continue to sweat profusely at times. Acceleration stress. This again puts considerable fatigue and reduces your dexterity, that is, as far as your arm movement is concerned. Acceleration stress would, of course, take place during the time when the spacecraft is inside the launch vehicle and you are, in fact, moving towards orbit or coming back from the orbit towards Earth. When it comes to pressure conditions, it is not normal for a human being to be under changing air pressure conditions. This again becomes normal after hundreds of hours of training. Oxygen atmospheric considerations. Talking about these again, varying atmospheric conditions are not normal and need to be trained inside a well designed simulator which can cater for such aspects. Fatigue and endurance, just like the acceleration stress that I talked about during launch and descent, physical training of astronauts is primarily able to cater to these aspects. Three-dimensional conditioning of the human body. We must always remember a spacecraft is a 6 degree of freedom vehicle and it rotates in almost all directions when looking at Earth from space. Again, this requires specialized aeromedical training to get used to and become comfortable. There will always be ambient noises and the oral conditions which will not or never be what you are usually used to here on Earth. That includes vibration stress. These produce an uncomfortable or unfamiliar environment. Again, something humans are not used to. In the end, we come to fear management, fear of the unknown, and exploratory uncertainties. This is self-explanatory and maybe these cannot be overcome for the actual mission until flying it yourselves. Now let's have a look at the specifics as to how to become an ISRO astronaut in the near future, or maybe let's say 3 to 4 years down the line. In almost all probability, we would have applications being invited and shortlisted before medicals and psychological evals take place. What essentially would get maximum credit in getting your applications shortlisted would be the credit for your core academic performance, the credit for meaningful science research work, credit for other skill sets, for example, certificates in programming language, foreign language, other technical qualifications such as electronics, robotics, or any other discipline. There would, of course, be a credit for any sporting achievements, because any kind of sporting achievements straight away prove your stress taking capability. There would also be a significant amount of credit for other non-technical qualifications, for things as simple as, let's say, calligraphy skills. And of course, in the end, there would be significant credit for any kind of professional jet flying experience, because flying a jet aircraft is something which is pretty close to being inside a spacecraft. Not to forget, the expected age group would be the early 30s. That is, I'm talking about anyone who's below the age of 35. Amongst these, who would be most suitable, eligible, or preferable? Again, these are just, I'm kind of, I'm not the official person or spokesperson of ISRO while talking on this, but this is what I can already foresee, having been in this astronaut business for the last 5 years. Mostly these will be people from experimental domains, scientists involved in direct aerospace research. And what they need to really appreciate while shaping up their personal researches is, what are the current challenges being faced by the space agency amongst technologies towards space flight? Technological breakthroughs required in space, experiments to be performed in space in search of newer technologies, any research experimental work that would instantly interest the selecting space agency, that is the Indian Space Research Organization. So if you have some research work which can make life of Indian Space Research Organization in the kind of struggles it is facing with its technical paths, of course, you will certainly get preference over others. The next set of people I would believe would be from academia, who are also involved in serious and contextual research work. Next would be people involved in medicinal research work. And lastly, it would also be or continue to be military aviators involved in in-flight experimental research, namely experimental test pilots or even normal pilots who are not ETPs. As the program will continue to progress further, we would see more and more people uh, being selected from the first three group of people highlighted in this slide. And military aviators would continue to become lesser in numbers as far as the size of a particular batch of astronauts is concerned. Now let's have a look at roles of various era of astronauts. So when a space program takes off, and by the time it stabilizes or gets completed or gets finished, we have various era of astronauts. We have openers or pioneer astronauts. So I've drawn an equivalent from the cricketing world. Then we have middle order or stabilizer astronauts. And in the end, we have tailenders or finisher astronauts. So openers or pioneer astronauts, it is their responsibility to show maximum patience as the space program is still shaping up. There may be considerable delays in prototype programs, which is normal. However, pioneer astronauts get to work on various developmental projects which none of their successors would. These astronauts get to participate in creating the necessary science for going to space. They use prototype technology and consequently have to take considerable amount of risks. They get to do less of science in space because the uh, space program is just beginning to mushroom. As astronauts of the Indian human space program or probable astronauts who want to take up a career in the Indian human space program, they have to understand that for the coming decade, they will form a part of the first set of era of astronauts that I just mentioned, who are the openers. Why I say they are openers? Because the ball is swinging all the way and there is a lot of uncertainty. Nothing is very well defined. And the only thing that you need to do is that you need to have more patience with the amount of time it takes for the program to actually take off. When we come to the middle order or the stabilizer astronauts, these astronauts will experience a phase in which the program has more or less stabilized and the degrees of uncertainties are way lesser than the previous era. Of course, the hard work of the era which has gone by and which was seen, all the hardships which were seen by the pioneer astronauts and their fellow scientists who worked very hard, the fruits of their labor would be enjoyed by the middle order, the stabilizer astronauts. And in the end, we have the tail enders or the finisher astronauts. These are astronauts who mostly do the science in space when the program has completely stabilized and enjoy the benefits of a completely stabilized space program. Notwithstanding, their task is equally difficult, but in a different way. Coming to roles of pioneer astronauts, because these are the kind of astronauts that India will see in the decade to come. It is important to appreciate for these astronauts to be in sync with the space program and walk toe to toe with the space agency. Pioneer human space programs take decades to lift off and stabilize. Roles of astronauts would be completely different. They should be willing to withstand long waiting times for a mission assignment. Patience would be an essential attribute. Average going rate for mission assignment could be 7 to 9 years from the time you commence training and could be longer than that, in fact. There is a need to understand and appreciate what does the nation's human space program require currently? What are its immediate goals and what is going on? I'm specifically covering the role of a pioneer astronaut because anyone in India at present who dreams of becoming an astronaut would end up landing up in the role of a pioneer astronaut. And that is why it is essential to define the role and the work conditions that would be faced by a pioneer astronaut. As far as my personal journey goes, it is best described by the famous quote of Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a wood, and when it came to me, I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So in life, all of us may get two choices. One, which may have more money, more glamour, more promises, excitement. And perhaps another one with more knowledge, more uncertainties, probably less money, relatively speaking, and no assurances of a comfortable life. The other path or the second path could be far, far more difficult to follow or to choose. It is you who has to choose one for yourself. In the end, to conclude, I would say to become an astronaut is basically to commit your life for the cause of space, research, and science. It is not about getting famous or getting a space ride or seeing Earth from space. That all of us can do sitting here on Earth in a video as well. So choose carefully. To become an astronaut, as per me, the only thing one needs to do is love science, do science, and become science. Thank you. No video.